back for 2018. We just want to say a quick thank you for listening last year to our first year. It was a lot of fun. This is sort of a project that we've been thinking about for a while, and so we finally got it up, and we're just thankful for you all listening. All right, I'm Keith.
It's Travis.
And I'm Kyle.
And this is producer Josh.
So welcome to What About This, episode 13. Today we're going to be talking about some of the recent news. Last year there were a lot of celebrities and a lot of really high-profile people that were accused of some really terrible things. And even recently, in the first couple days of 2018, we had a fairly famous YouTube personality get in trouble for one of his videos. And so the question today that we want to tackle is, what is sort of the responsibility of the viewer or the consumer when it comes to approaching the project that those people who have been accused of terrible things were involved in? So a couple of the examples that we're thinking about, like one was last year, Kevin Spacey was accused of sexual harassment, and one of his upcoming movies, All the Money in the World, was reshot in like a month to remove him from the project. Another one was Logan Paul, again, this is a few days ago, was filming in Japan and produced a pretty insensitive video. And so he came out with apologies. He did the apology tour. He did the whole thing. And there's some backlash against his work. So the question is, what is our responsibility? What should we be doing with these types of things that we hear about?
Don't everybody talk at once here.
Yeah,
right?
I think.
Jump in.
I think.
Well, let me flesh out and then jump in. Flesh out a little bit more of.
Wait, let's. In case you haven't seen the Logan Paul video, someone want to describe what it was?
Yeah, it was. You can't. It's already taken down off of YouTube, so you can't YouTube it. Basically, what it is they are going to this forest in Japan that is known for people going and committing suicide. I don't know if people really know why. That's just it happens to like be a thing there, like in this forest. And so they were originally planning to like spend the night in there because they thought it was going to be like spooky, which it seems like it would be. And as they're walking in, like in the video, it's daytime, and they're walking in, and they probably walk 100 yards in, not super far, and there is just a body hanging there. And they walk like right up to it. They're filming within like the face is blurred out, but they're filming like a foot away from him, and they're like, "Oh man, this like must have like just happened." And then the first sense that they do is like, like this is so sad, like, get help and these types of things. And then it like cuts to almost like would you say it's like B-roll or something where they're talking, and like all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, you never like stood next to a dead body before?" And they're like,
yeah. Well, he's like, he starts out legitimately like panicked about it. Like
right.
he's like, "Oh my gosh, I've never seen anything like this." And then they cut to the part where he becomes the YouTuber again.
Almost like outtakes.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
It seems like where they're laughing and kind of like making jokes about it, and they're like, but then in the laughing they're like, no, but like it's serious, and it just seems very awkward.
And it's like, no, we believe you.
Yeah, like
right.
Like it's like they're saying like no, but it's serious, and you're like, everybody else thinks it's serious, man. Like, yeah. So that's what the video is.
I think that's where things like took a turn right there was because he knew he was going to get views for that, and you put and the sad thing is like his audience it's not people with ethics, it's teenagers, it's
well said.
Well, here's the big part of that too, is I know when I saw the whole thing was Logan Paul, I just happened to be visiting my wife's family in Wisconsin the week before, and my nephews that are 7 and 10 tell me that they watch Logan Paul like every day. Mm-hmm. So that means that like my 7 and 10-year-old nephews potentially saw that video.
Yeah.
So then, because obviously he's done he released the apology video, and there's going to be some backlash, and old man Keith doesn't know how, like, whether he has sponsors or whatever, like, I don't know what the repercussions for him are going to be. But obviously he's going to lose some sort of influence revenue, whatever you want to call it.
I'd say he says he didn't monetize the video, but
Right.
he monetizes all of his other
Right,
videos.
yeah, that's what I mean.
And he like sells merchandise
And he's obviously going to lose people, like you said. There's going to be families that find out about that, and they're going to keep their kids from seeing his
right,
videos.
like absolutely.
But,
So
but the
who's
thing
that?
about the
So-
celebrity world is you reinvent yourself, and it really doesn't matter. And apologies are part of the culture.
Right.
And we dismiss it as soon as.
Do you know how much money he made off the apology video? Over $12,000.
Yeah. So the question, one of the questions is then
so he monetized the apology video.
right.
Yeah.
I'm sure he did.
Yeah, he
Interesting.
Yep.
So the question is like, what are we as viewers supposed to do with this now? Like, are we just gonna? Travis, you were talking about like, do we just straight up boycott this person? Like, do we boycott these people who any project that they were ever associated with?
Well, that's
Do we
the
erase
debate.
them from the Do we erase them from the past? Like, what do we do?
That's-
Especially with the Kevin Spacey thing. Like, he's been in a lot of really great movies, and we just want to make a clarification. Like, we are not talking about whether or not. Like, we obviously all think sexual harassment's a very serious thing. We think that if he is, that we should sort of listen to the people who are accusing and like listen to all that and do all that. So I don't want to say we're setting that aside, but the question is, well, what do we now do with the
What
sort
is
of
our
work of that,
responsibility?
of someone who is part of that?
What is our responsibility?
Right.
And to kind of expand on the question is
Right.
is where do we come in with this whole? Okay, so the Kevin Spacey, or even politicians, and
Right.
what's the filmmaker recently?
Harvey
Harvey Weinstein. Yeah.
So you go, okay, can I never watch any of their work?
Right.
Should I never watch their work again? Is watching their work, is endorsing their work,
Right.
endorsing them, therefore endorsing their behavior. And so what ends up happening is we get in this debate, in this discussion about, well, am I never going to watch American Beauty again because Kevin Spacey did this? Well, I don't know. Should you not? And I think really what we're asking is, and I think what a lot of people's heart cry is stop endorsing these guys because you're perpetuating
Right.
these issues with these guys in power and this fame, and they end up continuing to jump back into these roles or these positions in life that continue to allow them to perpetuate things such as sexual harassment,
Right.
whatever. And so, can I enjoy a film some psychopath serial killer made? Yeah, if it's good, I can enjoy it. You can. So that was a great film, but so that's not really the question, right? We know we can enjoy something that
Right.
somebody made who did something terrible, and I think we start getting into the fact that most people would, they look at somebody's actions, their behavior, and they go, "I would never do that."
Right.
Or we get into the comparison game and we do that stuff. So this isn't a way so that we can figure out how we can feel good about ourselves still watching
Right.
those
Right.
films. But the question is having to decide that. What is the responsibility? Do you boycott it? And does that make sense to do that?
Right.
And so that's really, I think, what we're trying to drive at a little bit,
Right,
even
like
with
that-
the Logan Paul
Right.
thing. Or,
Like that's what I think about like for example, a movie like The King's Speech, where you're like, dude, it's such a great movie, like won Best Picture, amazing story. It's a Weinstein Company film, so
Right.
it's like this. So the question is, like, it sounds like what you're proposing is, so like, can I not watch The King's Speech anymore?
Right. Well, and then what I think too is that there are so many more people involved in putting that film out than just the one guy, Harvey Weinstein. Not to say he wasn't a crucial part of it, and if it weren't for him, it would never have come out. But like, then am I to dismiss everybody else's work? Like, it's a little bit different with something like Logan Paul, right? Because he's a
Right.
singular entity. He
He's
is the
the
driving
only one
force,
who
right?
benefits from that.
Right. And I'm sure he has a team and all that, but
Sure,
like, it's
but
like his.
Let
Like, it's
me
his,
let me
but,
ask
like,
you this real quick though. Do you think that YouTube celebrities should be held to the same standard as Hollywood celebrities when it comes to that?
Well,
do you mean when it comes to the repercussions or when it comes to the behavior itself?
When it comes to the behavior itself, because these
Yeah.
like YouTube celebrities are really just regular dudes and women that picked up cameras and started doing stuff.
well, but it's
But
just a different, it's just a different medium.
So then the
Yeah,
question
yeah.
is, should we hold everybody to that standard?
Yeah,
or
because
not?
we
Then
just,
yes.
which is
Yeah.
to the point, and before I forget about this is so much of the debate revolves around monetary gain.
Right.
And that's the bigger problem. The bigger problem is that we start talking about, well, like, look how much money this guy's making off this film. Stop paying him.
It seems
think
like that's the whole. The money is the whole thing.
And that actually is a bad argument.
Right.
Because it just, all it's doing is it is exposing our highest value in our culture. And even your question, which you probably didn't really think through, Josh, was should those celebrities be held to these celebrities? The reason you asked like that is because that's exactly how culture is.
Yeah.
That's exactly how it is.
Right.
But then it goes, no, yeah, of course, because they're human.
Right.
So there aren't lesser humans, but what we do is we give certain people power, and that's why these things continue to perpetuate. It's kind of like
Right.
Noam Chomsky's whole thing on, he was going after the misuse of power.
Right.
And really that's a huge debate. And so, yeah, if you want to throw in the money thing in there,
Right.
yeah, it has a lot to do with the fact that you continue to give, those who have the most money have the most power.
Right. Well, and
For the most part.
And the idea that power is not just simply what we think about. Maybe I would say it politically, right? Where you hold the most influence over someone by way of law or by way of institution.
Mm-hmm.
Power is a much more diffuse problem that this is exposing, obviously, on some level. Because here's the question, and this is all disclaimer, meaning I don't have any proof of any of this, but let's say like the third key grip on the King's Speech was also sexual harassing someone. Should we now not watch that movie because of that person was doing it? But we'll just never find out because that person is a name on a screen that scrolls by at the very end of the movie, right? And it doesn't mean, this doesn't excuse Weinstein's behavior, but it puts it in the question of like, why does his abuse matter more than others? And I think to your point, Travis, is that it's because he was in a position of power that abused people that were in a position to not
More vulnerable
yeah,
state.
vulnerable, that to not really be able to defend themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think then we're talking about power. If we're talking about that, the real question is not whether he made money off of it,
No.
but how did he abuse the position he was in to hold that over people.
Well, yeah, because part of the discussion on in all sorts of areas are, if you buy the King's Speech, you're now putting money back into this perpetrator's hands, this guy's bank account, and you're going to continue to fund his art and his work.
If that's the case, then say he's removed from all of it, he will never make another dime from these movies. Then what, right? Do we still feel like we're endorsing that behavior by watching something he was a part of? I think it becomes really complex because it's like, at what is the point at which that person has been removed far enough from it, the power that he abused to begin with, the money that he's going to make from it, all that stuff. At what is the point where is there, and this is, I think, for me, an interesting question.
Where's the line?
Where is the separation line between art and artist?
I think the thing with Weinstein is complicated though, because like he defined an entire era of movies. Like if you were to watch no Weinstein incorporated movies, like the 90s would not have even existed pretty much. So like even someone like Kevin Smith came out and said like, hey, I'm sorry, I know like Weinstein funded all these films I made, Clerks and Mallrats and all that, so I'm going to be giving proceeds from my profits from my movies to abuse organizations and people who have suffered like that. But like it's hard to boycott, and like you said, it's hard to boycott someone because a producer is head over everything.
Right.
So like if you boycott a producer, then like there's nothing to watch.
Right. Well, not only that, but then you're boycotting some really good people and artists that like produce some really important work. That's right. Like, and it's pushing boundaries of conversations that we want to have.
Yeah.
It's a hard.
So the thing is though, the pushback would be okay. So producer or people, right? And so you go who? No. Because producers give me art and I can't think and go outside and think my own thought. I need to sit in front of a TV. And so like the pushback would be like, whoa, so hold on. So then therefore it's okay, right? This is going to be the pushback.
Right.
And so we go, so I think it's no. So I think that's why it's about, hey, this has to stop. this position has to
Right.
This position has to be carefully. It's like you need a board
Yeah.
to make sure this lunatic guy that.
But here's
that's what happens with power position.
here's the real problem with that is that the real problem with the Weinstein thing, not the real problem, but one of the other real problems was, it wasn't just that he was doing it; it's that he had a whole team around him covering it up and making sure he could keep doing it, so he could keep making the money. So there was a whole bunch of people covering it up for him, like that knew about it. It was called. Several people, lots of people call it the open secret in Hollywood that Weinstein was abusing women. So it's like, yes, you need a board, but what happens when the board is complicit?
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, because they're also gaining from it. That's why there's no, in any sort of like research, because there's such a desperation to get it published and everything,
Right.
and to skew the results. The people who check the results aren't in the same field,
Right.
Because if it's full of a bunch of scientists, those scientists go, yeah, and instead they could bring out outsiders and go, no, that's not what it says.
Right.
That's not what it does.
Right.
And so it's this accountability, but even to turn around and say, I'm going to give a bunch of my money to abuse organizations, that's not going to help either if he's not changed. If he has to change. You know what I'm saying? I think, I don't know if they were saying if he would do that or...
No, it
Kevin
was
Smith
Kevin
would do that.
Smith, because Weinstein produced like most of his movies.
So he wasn't saying that Weinstein would give the money. Kevin Smith was saying any money he made from those movies that Weinstein produced would be going towards those organizations.
So he was kind of in
So
some...
he was saying like, this is what I was, even if I didn't know about it, even if I wasn't like protecting him, I was in some way complicit because he made movies for me.
Okay.
And so I'm gonna make sure the money from those movies doesn't go to me. It goes to organization that helps people at the beach.
Okay, so that's the guy that goes, we made the art piece,
Right.
Right.
and I'm saddened by this. How can I, even though, say I didn't do anything...
Right. Because he's recognizing that obviously he's still gonna make money off of it because people are still gonna keep watching.
Yeah, yeah.
Here's
Here's my last thing before you jump in is the problem that we all face is it's always going because it's a matter of ethics that all of a sudden we're talking about ethics right now.
Right.
Is as long as I could justify watching it in my head, I can justify. You know what I'm saying? If I can distance myself from what this person did because my desire to watch or to listen or to endorse this, because I for some reason can't let this movie go. Mm-hmm. What we end up doing is we distance ourselves from that person and we start to convince ourselves that it's okay because I want to. So it becomes a matter of well, I want to do that so I can look the other way.
right.
And so that is a central issue within this topic is people pick and choose the same way, it's it's family. Oh, it's family.
Right.
Like, well, that's interesting because all of a sudden you're in the mob now? Like
Well, here's what I've been wondering throughout this whole, as I've been seeing all these allegations come up, and then through the allegations, all these boycotts, and not that it is not an appropriate response, I think, but here's the question I've wondered. I'm trying to make sure I say this the right way. Why this issue? Why was simply this issue the means or the vehicle for boycott? And what I mean by that is, and not to go to like nail on the head, but for how many generations have we had like artists putting out music that is like super profane and super derogatory and super violent and super, like you could call it unwholesome.
Right.
And it's
degrading,
right?
yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like really like rough, like towards women, or like we have. I mean, if we're being honest, it's hip hop is what is talking the most about like violence and things like that, and drug use, but
they're the I would only say this, they're the most explicit.
Sure, that's
rock and roll
right.
built on that.
And I'm not. That's why I was like, I'm not gonna sit here and be like, it's rap music. No, it's like all kinds of music.
Right.
But of course, that's like the first thing you think of.
Right. Of course.
And so I go, but like for example, like this is gonna really like date me, I guess.
Nice.
Like 50 Cent was talking about that. Like I remember, dude, I had the album Get Rich or Die Trying, and like there was a song on there that the whole beat was a gun cocking and shooting, and it was all about how like the line of the song was like, catch you slipping, I'm gonna kill you. And I remember being like a 13-year-old and being like, that's right. And he was like, but like the whole song is him like describing like how he's gonna kill these people, but then he made 4 more albums and we all bought them.
So
like,
this
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So this starts to hit home a lot closer to what I do. So some of the books I teach are old. Mm-hmm. So I teach books from pre-Civil War America regularly. What do I do?
Is that like Goosebumps and Harry Potter?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. R.L. Stein.
Say cheese and die, Josh.
Dude, don't even. You guys don't know about Goosebumps.
Future episode, Kyle. Fun.
You're right. I don't. I was reading real books as a kid.
R.L. Stein probably heard you say that.
So I you deal with books that regularly deal with attitudes, racist attitudes, like that the attitude of not just the book, but I know for a fact the author towards African Americans is horrible.
Yeah.
But the book is exquisitely written, and it's part of one of the greatest, it's part of the great literary tradition of our country. What do I do with that? And I have this conversation regularly with my students, but how do I separate that? Even someone like Mark Twain, who was a little bit more for his time progressive, and Huckleberry Finn and all that, but like still...
But not all the way.
Not all the way.
Yeah.
Not in a way that we would consider appropriate now. And you see people like banning it or not wanting to read it. But the question is like, at what point do I, when I'm going back and for my students to be literate in American literature, they need to read some of these books, as difficult as they are to read sometimes. It's like, at what point do we start to do and I don't want to say like our values, but our ethics today influence what and how we and who we read before. So 50 Cent said in the most white way possible.
50 cents.
So back then we didn't maybe have the awareness, or we didn't think about it as much as we do now. Mm-hmm. But 100 years ago, 150 years ago, what do we do with this information now when we find out not just that the art itself is the problem, but the artist is the problem? Classic example, I am a huge fan of Hemingway. He was a raging alcoholic, a terrible misogynist, likely a racist, right? Yeah. So it's like, but his work is beautiful, even though it contains those elements in that. I can read it. When I'm reading his book, I'm not like, yeah, this is fine. I'm like, no, you should not treat a woman that way.
Yes.
But I still enjoy it. And not just enjoy it, but sometimes I teach it. Should I stop teaching it? Should I just erase him from my syllabus?
Well,
let me real quick. Let me ask you this: do you think that all like brilliant minds are prone to some sort of madness, some sort of?
Well, I would say
all minds.
Yeah, I would say exactly.
All right, so here's what I was gonna. You bring up the 50 Cent thing. That's interesting, right? Because what we do in our head is, as long as 50 Cent isn't each time he cocks again, he actually didn't kill anybody. Right. So it's further away, but we also know that what that is doing. It is perpetuating a culture.
It's definitely influencing.
Yeah. Whereas the Weinstein thing is like, it's right there in your face, hands on. We could see it. Okay.
Right. And I guess one of the questions that you just said with perpetuating culture, are we more okay? Like that music was perpetuating a cultural style, right? A cultural attitude, maybe a stance, right?
Yeah. Maybe influencing young minds who are around certain.
Right. But Weinstein was promoting an actual physical toxic culture within a company that produced physical, mental, emotional, and psychological abuse.
Exactly.
And so, and I'm not saying that the music can't produce that. What I'm saying is we have tangible evidence that Weinstein produced that.
Exactly.
We don't have necessarily tangible evidence. There's a big debate in the social sciences, psychology, about influence of like video game violence and music violence. Like there's no way to say that there's no correlative. There's no saying like this for sure produces that.
Exactly.
We have evidence that what Weinstein was doing, not just in his own behavior, but probably in his company, produced some pretty toxic things.
Let me walk you guys down a rabbit hole scenario real quick. So say starving artist, okay, he looking for his big break or writes a screenplay, and the only person that's going to buy it is someone like Weinstein, and he's offering you go from having nothing, and he shows you a check for like $2 million. What do you do in that scenario?
Well, see, and this is why what Weinstein did was even worse, because he was in a position to do just that, to make you as a person compromise your ethics for your money. That's the real.
That's the nature of Hollywood.
Because
But
he would
that's-
often buy like
But that's
independent
the,
scripts
that's the
and things
real
like-
sickness of what happened, is that there wasn't another choice. Maybe he was just throwing money at them. Was he? And the question then becomes: was he just buying these scripts to make good movies so he could continue to?
Well,
abuse people?
there's a reality to your question, Josh. In Hollywood, in fashion, in photography, and all these guys who become like these figures,
Right.
you know, they have this perceived power, meaning, so even a lot of young models, they think these guys will use their power and they'll say, you have to sleep with me or I'm going to ruin your career.
There's a reason the casting couch is a trope.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So you go, well, that guy can't ruin your career, but he's playing on your insecurity and what you think he can do. And so a lot of times, yes, this is happening outside of that, you know, is like,
Right.
if you do this in advance, if you do this, you
Right.
know, I'm making an advance
Right.
for an
So,
advance.
so then I think this question gets expanded to, like, are we only boycotting someone like Weinstein because we know about it? And then that knowledge, to me, I see that and say, well, he can't be the only one. Mm-hmm. And so then it's like, do I just stop watching movies? Do I just stop?
Bill Burr has a whole thing
Right.
on athletes, and do I stop watching football, that team, because
Right.
that guy just got charged with domestic violence, and in the moment everyone puffs up their chest and slams their hand and said, I will not, and you're like, no, but you do. And so there's another I'll throw another thing in there about this discussion is, when it comes down, I think something has to be done, right? So
right.
that's obvious.
Yeah, and then that's where this conversation is coming from.
But where I think the problem lies in when we look at someone like Weinstein, or any sort of issue like this.
Right.
And do we endorse, or do we stop watching? Do we never do you never teach Mark Twain? Never
Right.
read Hemingway? Do you never do any of those things? It starts to become very foggy for
Right.
me, because what you're saying is there's no good in them at all, and you're saying that you're all good.
Right.
And so do we? How many people watch documentaries? He's dead, but on Hitler and the Holocaust. And
I believe the History Channel just changed their name to the Hitler Channel.
yeah, I mean,
No, I'm just kidding. But they had a lot of World War II documentaries like 10 years ago.
yeah,
That's pretty good, Keith. That's pretty good.
I don't think that's an original joke, just to let you know.
Hmm.
So
yeah.
No,
Come on, now we're
you
getting
heard
sued.
it
never
here
heard it.
first. We're
Yeah.
copywriting it, TM. That's how you copyright things.
But we all kind of have this in us. We want to hear about, learn about,
Right.
and then it's like, oh, if so and so
Right.
was an adulterer, but he was just an adulterer, so that's fine. I could watch his stuff.
yeah.
So and so is, he only killed one person.
Right. Well, and that's a little bit, Kyle, to your point. Of like, this happens to be a really serious thing, and it also happens to be a very relevant issue now,
Yes.
right? So it's like, and I'm not saying that one diminishes the other, but
I guess
the fact that's now a thing, like, oh, sexual harassment and awareness of it, and trying to, that's that 10 years from now. Hopefully, we don't have to deal with it as much, but then another issue will be more serious. So it's like,
right, like
there are other things that people are doing that we're not paying attention to.
Yeah, like I'm not saying one or the other is like more deserving. I'm more asking like why this and not this.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Well, and the interesting thing, and I think this can go back to I'm thinking of an athlete, but it could translate back to I guess whoever. But you have like someone like Ray Rice, who is the running back for the Ravens, who got caught in domestic abuse, like pretty like excommunicated from the NFL.
Right.
No teams will touch him. And so I guess this would go towards like a Kevin Spacey thing as well. And this is like I'm not thinking one way or the other. I guess I'm asking the question. So does he never get to play again? And so does Kevin Spacey. Like, at what point, if ever, does Kevin Spacey get to make another movie?
Okay, so here's the question: in what other professions, if this behavior was happening,
Right.
would they ever hire you back? In what other professions
Yeah.
do these things? They're the untouchables in
Yeah.
society, and I think that's the bigger problem. You have the Ray Rice. You're like, yeah, like why? Because it's football. All of a sudden, do we forgive to a fault? Because I guarantee you, if you were a grocery clerk at Vaughn's, you probably wouldn't get hired at Lucky's.
So
You know what I'm
Say
saying?
Lucky's?
Yeah, I do.
that is
That was a throwback.
Yeah.
You know why? Because they don't exist.
I remember going to Lucky's, man. But then this then goes back to our sort of one of our places we started is that this is ultimately about power. So by cutting Ray Rice out of the NFL, I think what's really happening is that the owners are protecting themselves from being able to stay in power. Right? They're not doing it out of some sort of true moralistic thought, right? They're not just saying like, I can't stand that behavior, because they have guys on their roster that they know.
Right.
They probably have all the guys on their staff. They probably have friends that like they know that, and they're still friends, or they still like employ other people. So it's more about what is the minimum amount we have to do to keep this going?
Because here's what's interesting, and I think part of it too is just like, to be honest, I don't know, likability.
Right.
Because here's what's the thing. So Ray Rice, domestic violence, excommunicated from the NFL. Des Bryant of the Dallas Cowboys, domestic violence, also charged, found guilty. It was like he was abusing like his mom or something like that.
Jeez.
Still playing. He's a starter for the Cowboys.
So
you go, why? And so I guess that this
Yeah.
goes back to my overall theme of why this and not this. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, well, that's where it gets. You go, okay, so I was listening to this very topic being discussed, and it gets this person saying like, hey, at the end of the day, is I'm not going to stop listening or watching this because I like that. I like it. I like the person. I like so it was almost like Weinstein needs to be excommunicated because I don't like his films, but the next person that's just like him is I like their films, so now I'm torn. Now I'm torn. It's the blood thicker than water thing. It's all of a sudden you stand for something, and then all of a sudden someone in your inner circle's doing. You're like, hey man, we really gotta we gotta lean in and support, and we gotta help this person through this, or even I'm gonna look the other way because I really like you.
Well, and I
to
think,
Kyle's
right,
point.
and I think that's the even look. You look at sort of. It seems really cynical, but you look at the response of to simplify a whole industry, Hollywood, to the Weinstein thing. Like obviously, 95% of them are like completely distancing themselves from this people. People are like, oh, I knew all along, and I was afraid to not say anything. He was gonna like all this stuff. They're distancing themselves, and yet there's very little effort. There is some, but there's very little tangible effort that I've seen to guarantee that something like this won't happen again.
How far?
And it's I think because a lot of people that are they're doing it so they can exercise this from them, meaning they can say like, well, Weinstein is out, while still perpetuating some very similar, if not the same use of power and abuse of power, even if it's not like sexual abuse on the scale of him.
Yeah.
So they're saying like, well, we've gotten rid of him. It's like if I have a mouthful of bad teeth and I pull the worst one out, I'm like, no, but my teeth are fine now. I'm like, no, man, like there's still a bunch of rot in there.
Yeah.
Why are you not taking? You just pulled the worst one out. That doesn't mean you've solved the issue. So I think a lot of it, the same thing with the Ray Rice thing. Like you choose one person as an example to say, I mean, it's the literal scapegoat, right?
Yeah.
The tradition is you would pile your sins on an animal, send them off into the desert, and that was a scapegoat, right? Mm-hmm. You would literally sacrifice a single thing to absolve the entire community. And it's like, that doesn't necessarily work.
Yeah.
How far?
Paint pictures and illustrated skate.
How far do you guys think an apology should get somebody though in the case of like sexual harassment?
I think there has to be a true consequence.
Yeah.
Because forgiveness isn't
And
doesn't need to be
absolution.
or
that a word?
blind. It's
Well,
not blindness.
But forgiveness is also not based on
Consequence.
what they said or the consequence of it. So whether we as a culture have decided to forgive Weinstein or not is a separate question from what should happen to him.
Yeah, meaning like that doesn't just because you can forgive somebody doesn't mean that you need to allow them near
Right.
and allow them to continue to do. I mean, this is why
Right.
year after year, because of human beings, say in these professions and in all sorts of other professions, this happens as
Right.
well. These
Yeah.
just tend to be the god of our society, right? And so you go, but there's no true consequences year after year. Like if it that's why I think is it Indonesia or Tahiti or something is like if you steal you die
Indonesia,
or
yeah.
so the crime rate's pretty low.
You get caned.
It's pretty low. And so I'm not suggesting that. I'm just, what I'm saying is though is if guys knew in the NFL like, hey man, if you're bossing drugs, the drug like it's
Right.
in all of these things is if you took a drug test and you had cocaine or whatever in your system, you're fired. That's it. And in these situations, you go, yeah, but it's football. You're like, what? Why are guys in tights the exception? And there's another guy just as good as Ray Rice. Just get him.
Right.
Right.
Let this guy go work somewhere else. But also now you're getting into also how do we as a society take that person and go, hey, rehabilitation, change. You need to. But no, there's all these other people that are like anger management classes, and you need to do this.
Well, and then to me, the other thing that strikes me is like there's a real disingenuity.
Yeah.
Is that the way you'd say that? Yeah, disingenuity of the demand for the apology and rehabilitation, because the rehabilitation, the demand for that is not about the person. It's always about the person asking, right? In when you see this in popular culture, like if someone is demanding that Weinstein gets reformed or rehabilitated, it's for them. There's no real sense that they care about him. And I'm not saying they should, I'm not saying they shouldn't. I think we should all sort of find empathy for even the worst among us, right? Because they're all ultimately human, right? And that their flaws are our flaws on some level. So if you're going to ask, like, what I would want for him is like to be truly transformed. Like he really needs to do some soul searching and like find what in himself prompted the behavior. But I don't need that to happen for me.
No,
I'm fine. I don't need him to be rehabilitated so I can feel better about the world. Right? That's not, and I feel like that's so much of this demand for apology and like it's not about. It's not true forgiveness. It's just like you need to get better for me.
Right.
No, yeah, it's we need to want him to get better because he's human and because he's harming other humans, and so right.
Yeah, and that's the only way that the system itself is going to be reformed.
Would you feel better about him working in the future if he went to prison?
I don't know
because
that it would
prison's
matter.
like prison's not a solution necessarily.
Sure.
But
I think if he came out tomorrow and said, you know what, I'm going to accept the fullness of the consequences for my actions, whatever that means. I'm not going to say it means this or this. I'm just going to say whatever happens, I admit to this. I did all of this, and this. I'll give you the evidence. I'm going to give it to the legal system. Whatever happens, happens. Mm-hmm. I think I would start to feel better then because that shows me he's
even
willing
apologies.
To, not, but that's
no. I'm
yeah,
saying
yeah.
even other apologies within like sports and stuff. It's kind of like, hey man, or I said this on the Grammys, or they go, hey, here's what you need to do.
Right.
You need to go up. You need to apologize. And so now we'll spin it.
Right.
We'll use it to our benefit.
It's hard to know what's genuine because it's very formulaic too.
I'm going to say none of it's genuine.
Yeah.
Because it's all about getting them back on the field, back in the room, back in the production chair.
It's funny that we're in this because the other day I was talking to a buddy, and I said, when someone changes, it's not confusing.
Right.
It's not confusing.
You know.
Right.
You know.
No.
And I have so much experience with that in seeing someone. I go, just wait. You'll know. You won't have to ask. You won't have to guess. You won't have to wonder. You will know. And this is why even I always go, I'll know you loved her when you die. Because then I'll know. Because I won't be asking anymore if you truly love her, because once you're dead, we'll know.
With that question, who I keep thinking back to. It's funny because I'm like not that savvy in like the entertainment world, but I am very.
Says the guy who has worked like the ESPYs, and the Grammys, and the Oscars.
But I follow much more closely the sports world, and I think about like Michael Vick, who is. It was a rare case that you go, man, an NFL superstar is going to prison. He's going to prison. And maybe it's just me, and maybe this is to do with culture and things like that too. But he was in prison for a couple years.
It's like 18 months, something like that. Yeah.
I'll say this to your question about prison is that was for dogs, right?
Yeah.
The sad reality is like
that he went to prison for dogs.
Over like how many people should be because of what they're doing to humans.
Right.
I love dogs, but
they're not. But they're not humans.
But they're not humans.
And so, but for me, like I don't know what this says about me or what, I don't know. But so he got out of prison, got a second chance at the NFL, and I think along with most people went, okay, you're right. He went to, and I don't know, maybe that's culture rubbing off on me, but I felt better about him going back to the NFL after having been in prison.
But also to Travis's point, the way he conducted himself post prison, it wasn't confusing.
Right.
He seemed. So I'm not saying that prison would. I'm saying is prison doesn't.
It's an option.
It doesn't automatically guarantee that he comes out of that process thinking differently or behaving differently.
But he's definitely not dogfighting anymore.
I'm talking about Weinstein. Obviously there was something that happened with Vic through the whole experience that profoundly changed him. It seems, right? Again, I don't know the man personally, but it just seems like it did.
From what the fans can see.
Right, and obviously it seemed very different. But And so maybe that's the thing. Maybe that's the rock bottom that Weinstein needs to change. Because again, all of this for me is less about whether he ever produces another movie again. I don't really care about that.
Right.
The question for me is: are we gonna get one more person, one more human being, on a different track than the one they were on? Right. That to me is the more important question, right?
Absolutely.
I don't ultimately care about his career. He could lose it all. It has no impact on my life. But as a person on Earth, as someone who participates in this strange thing we're calling life, I want one more person to start to be better.
Yeah. Right. Absolutely. Yeah. That would be
Keith is just giving a TED talk right now.
I know. Give him 18 minutes. It's why you have celebrities who should be in jail, but they go before a judge, and they go, the prisons, they're crowded.
Right.
So we're going to let you go.
Right.
We're going to fine you an insignificant number because it's not going to touch your bank account. And this is just the way power in a broken, kind of messed up world that we all have.
Yeah.
We are all part of, and we all do little things. Mm-hmm. But it just continues to go, you know what? It's a question of power and what you'll do with your power.
Right. Because the other option is, okay, he goes to jail. Let's say he can afford a really good legal team, and they get him off on the smallest of charges, and he goes to some Club Med prison, and he has enough money to have all this luxury in the what have we done? We've just sent him to a slightly less nice resort than he's used to.
Yes.
Right? What have we really done with him? So to me, that there is something to be said about the legal and justice system in the United States and its ability or its inability to do something, right? To rehabilitate someone. I'm not someone who subscribes to the fact that prison guarantees someone a change of heart. In fact, there's statistics that show regularly it goes the other way.
No, yeah, because
so
because prisons don't even get prisons are a business,
which is a whole other topic we could talk about.
Yeah,
let me kind of give my final thoughts here on what this is. So Max Landis, I don't know if you guys know who he is. He wrote some Superman comics for DC, and he wrote Chronicle that Josh Trank directed, and
We do not know this.
Bright. So he wrote Bright, the recent Netflix
I
film.
watched that.
And okay, so recently he has been accused of sexual harassment. Now that his name is like out there in the news right now. So I have two questions. Do you guys think that, we should wait before we jump on this bandwagon? Do you think that we should wait till it's proven that somebody has sexually harassed somebody? Because you have all these people seeking attention. And do you think that this sexual harassment movement or anti-sexual harassment movement is going to really change anything?
Here's what happens is sometimes when you see sexual harassment accusations popping up really quickly, the skeptical part of me wants to go, well, you want to go, are people just doing this to like get attention? And then I think that's very dangerous because but like as much as part of me wants to like wonder that, I can't. That would then be like me taking the side of the possible
perpetrator
accused, and I think and I quickly realized like, yeah, you can't think like that. You have to like. I think what is more likely is that one person has brought something to light, and more people are now feeling comfortable to do it.
Well, and then here's my thought on that is so situations like this rarely happen between two groups that are in equal amounts of power. So the people who are accusing and the people who are accused are on unequal levels of power.
Like in every time.
Almost every time, right? And obviously there are certain cases where it's not, but just generally speaking,
even if it's an issue of physicality.
Right. Abuse tends to only, not always, but it tends to, majority of the time, cross from someone in power to someone not in power. So
usually from men to women.
And usually from men to women. And so until the group who is accusing, who has been in a historical position of lesser power, has some sort of equanimity brought to their group, right? So in this case, until women as a group are allowed to have as much equal power as they can to men, I am always going to err on the side of letting them speak first.
Right.
Because they have historically been kept from speaking in ways that are unimaginable to me.
Sure.
So I am not in a position to say, let's wait to see where the facts lie out. That doesn't mean that I'm going to automatically say legally that guy is a sexually assault, sexual harassment, rapist, whatever.
But initial
because that's a different question. But I'm just not going to say we're going to wait. I'm going to say you as the accuser get to say your piece. Mm-hmm. You get to say what you need to say. And if it turns out that it's false, that's going to come back on them anyway, right? We've seen that happen, right? The most famous case is the Duke lacrosse team, right? Those men were exonerated because the woman came out that there was obviously lots to it. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but came out that what she said they didn't actually do, and that came out. But to say that we're going to take a step back and wait until the facts come out is only something that I, as a person in power, get to say, because the facts and the system will always favor me until it changes. So until the system changes to not always favor me, I'm not going to be the one that says I'm not going to listen to you.
Dang, Keith.
Nice.
That's a good landing.
Yeah.
I think we did it.
Amen.
I got nothing to say after
Yeah,
that.
me neither.
All right. Again, thanks for listening. This one's coming out soon, right?
Yeah, this will be up on Monday. You can find it on Podbean, iTunes, Google Play. We're up on Stitcher now, podcast.com, and podcasting outlets around the globe.
Do we have a MySpace?
As always, follow us on Twitter at WAT_podcast and
Facebook.
And follow us on Facebook.
Yeah. Yes.
All right. Thanks, guys.
We out there.
All right, let's get.
Brink here from Super BS, talking about the things you know you love and the things you'd love to know. Join us weekly for a podcast about video games. Mostly. Oh.